In this video, you're going to be building Instagram Web 3.0 dApp using Infura on the Ethereum blockchain. You're going to be able to upload images, create posts on the blockchain, and verify them using Etherscan. And other users will be able to come over, retrieve, and view those images, and kind of OnlyFans style, they will be able to tip you. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump straight into the build. All right, let's go ahead and get started building the Instagram clone. So as usual, step number one is always going to be using our custom-made Clever Programmer CLI tool. Well, obviously without the quote, that would be helpful. So pop in your name and email, obviously in the other order, and then you can just start typing Instagram and it will show up right there. And as you can see, it literally just opened up Infura. Go ahead, accept that, and if you don't have an account yet, you can go ahead and sign up right here. I'm already logged in, so I'm just gonna go ahead and click dashboard. But once you sign in, this is basically the screen that's going to greet you. And here you can see I have a couple of projects from before, but we're not going to be using that now. So you can go ahead and in the top right corner, go ahead and generate new key. You wanna select Web3 API, which says formerly Ethereum, because Infura now is supporting a bunch of random chains. So I don't even know how many chains they do support, but you will see inside. So I'm just gonna type in Instagram and then hit create. And then yeah, these are all the chains they support. Infura is jacked. This is the key that you're going to be needing. So go ahead and copy that. You can just press that and then we'll say copy them point. And we'll actually wait a little bit until the CLI tool finishes setting up our project. And once we're there, we're gonna continue. Now, once you see opening VS Code and ready, and actually it opened up on my other screen, but here it is, the Instagram clone starter files and everything. And you can go ahead and double check that all the node modules are installed. So like you should see it here and then you should see it there. And that should be basically pretty much enough to go with. Let's go ahead and spin this application up. So what I'm gonna do is use the built-in terminal in here. And I'm gonna use that to CD into, without the caps lock, CD into my next app. And then once I'm in there, I can just go ahead and type in yarn dev. And as usual, our next application is up and running. I'm gonna need a Chrome for that. Let's go ahead and grab that Chrome. And I'm going to put it right here. Little window management there. And let's go ahead and just type in localhost. Anyways, here's the Instagram clone, and this is what we're going to be using to build on top of. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started building the contract. All right, now let's go ahead and get started setting up all the Ethereum related stuff. Wait, let's just put a contract on the Ethereum blockchain. And to do that, we're going to use Truffle. So I'm just gonna type in Truffle in it. Oh, actually, I shouldn't have done that. All right, cut all of it. Like the video is starting now. Actually, it's starting now. All right, let's go ahead and just build this contract and get everything onto the Ethereum blockchain. So what I'm gonna do is just create a brand new folder in here. I'm just gonna type in Truffle app. And then using my terminal, I'm gonna go into Truffle app and then just type in Truffle init. No need for it. No need to force it. So that should be taking care of it pretty soon. All right, back to folder creation. So now that I have my new folder, wait, Jesus. All right, so let's go ahead and add a new folder, which I'm just gonna call Truffle app. And using my terminal, I'm just gonna go in there and you can go ahead and set up a brand new Truffle project that will be very easy to deploy onto the blockchain using Truffle. So we're gonna type in Truffle in its space period, and that should be a pretty fast thing to do. Now, there's a few things that we're going to be doing. So step number one, go into your migrations folder. So don't worry about that file, you won't have it. And in your migrations folder, you want to add a new file that we'll call 01_deploy.js. And actually, before we set that up, one more thing I like to do is just get started with the contract. So what you can type in is Truffle create and then just say Instagram like that. And that'll like basically just create a new Solidity file with all the basic stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in for you, making it nice and big. That's what she said. So now that that's out of the way, we can go into our deploy file, and we'll need to import that same contract that we just created. So const Instagram equals, and instead of like regular require, we're gonna use artifacts require, and we're gonna go ahead and say module exports and export the deployer itself. We're not gonna be using this for a little bit. This is just to set the contract up to be able to deploy. And it's such a quick thing that I figured like I'll do it now. And usually I forget it if I do it after I finish the contract. So I just wanted to get it out of the way. And now let's go. We're actually going to start typing Solidity code. So before we do anything, what we're really going to do is update the version of the Solidity, or update the Solidity version we're going to be using, and that's going to be 0.8.17. That is currently the latest one at the time of shooting, which you can see September 29, 9 a.m. or like almost 10 at this point. And we're actually not going to use the constructor at all. However, what we're going to have is we're going to have a struct, which you should just think about it as like an object. We're going to have image objects that we'll have to predefine, and they will have an ID. They will have an image URL, which we're just going to call URL. Then obviously they will have a caption, and they will have, and because this Instagram will actually allow users to tip each other, we'll actually store the total tipped amount basically there. And then you also, which obviously shouldn't really be a string, it should be a UN256, so I don't know what I did there. But then you want to have an author that's going to be payable, because the contract will actually figure out all the tip transferring things. So like, it will act as like a Stripe sort of thing. It's going to be a payment processor as well. And so we're just going to call it author. And then I like to create an array of addresses of all the tippers. So tipper addresses like that. And so that will be our image. Oh yeah, that error just went away, so that's cool. And there's gonna be a few more things that we're gonna be setting up. So we're gonna have a UN, which will be a public number. And that just, that's gonna literally take care of the amount. It's just going to count how many images we have. So it's just gonna be an index, and that's what we're going to implement and use it as ID later on. Turn compiler. Dude. And so one more thing we're going to be adding is a mapping. And that mapping is, all it's going to do is we'll be able to fetch individual images using this mapping. So we're going to have the ID that we're going to map to an image, which will be a public variable. And you should just think about it as like a tuple or some sort. So this mapping will look like that. And we're going to have two more events that we're going to get started with. And so event number one is going to be image created, that we obviously going to fire off when we create an image. So you want to have an ID for that. You want to have the URL in there. You want to have the caption, string caption like that. And you want to have the address payable, and it's going to be the author. So that's basically all it is to it. Actually, you should break the lines. Unlike me, I'm not entirely sure why is that thinking that there is some sort of trailing comma there, but clearly not a trailing comma. Now that's a trailing comma. Now that's all right. Whatever. We're gonna leave it. It's gonna figure itself out. I don't care. We're gonna figure it out. And then we're gonna have an image tipped variable, which will have another uint ID, which image was specifically tipped. You want to put the URL there, so whoever is looking at Etherscan is going to see that, okay, this is the actual image. You want to have the caption. You want to have the current tip that was actually awarded to. You want to have the current tip stored, which like you can literally see the current person, how much the current person have actually donated to that author. And then you want to have the total tipped, and then we can just put the address payable once again. So like that. And so break those lines again. All right, let it figure itself out. I don't really know what is happening. Oh, it says, okay, expected that guy, semicolon. And yeah, that's actually something that I keep messing. I keep forgetting to put semicolons, but in Solidity, you cannot get away with it. You have to be organized. You gotta do all this. And by the way, usually this is the point where I go ahead and get started with the remix ID, but we're just gonna go through this whole thing fast today. This is a little more advanced compared to all the other builds, so we're just gonna have them. You can just check out our channel, and there's a couple other videos right before this one that was again taught by me, and that will give you a full breakdown of every single line that we covered just here. But basically, what you will do what you would be able to do if we were to test everything out is just get back completely empty values. We're not going to do that. We're going to go ahead, actually cut this whole thing out. After the semicolon thing, let's just cut this out. There's no reason to. All right, so before we test this contract out, what you want to do is we should just create an upload image function, which will be public, and we'll have to pass in two things for that. String, memory. And by the way, this is just some random Solidity thing. Like sometimes you need memory for strings, but sometimes you don't. And there's no explanation for that, or at least I haven't found any. But yeah, so usually when we are declaring stuff, you don't need to use memory, but everywhere else you do, but you only need to use it with strings. So that's some interesting thing. And so we're gonna pass in two strings from the memory or something. One of them is going to be underscore image URL, and the other one is going to be underscore caption. And so this is going to be a public function, meaning anyone or any user can actually go ahead and invoke this function or use this function. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna need to make sure that the person who is trying to our Instagram app is actually, in fact, a real user and not just some random. Got that. Fuck. Why is my... Dude, ever since Microsoft is doing anything, they just fuck shit up. Like, why can't I turn my Copilot off? All right, disable. Reload. Obviously. All right, so before we actually start type up the functionality of this, before we actually finish up the function, we're gonna make sure that the person who's trying to upload an image is in fact a real person, because you could come in with a dummy or like a fake wallet, and that's not what we want to do. So we want to prevent that any kind of like random address would be able to. We want to prevent any kind of random address to interact with our contract, and if that would happen, we can just say invalid wallet address. So we actually need the user to have a valid Ethereum wallet. So that's the only thing that this thing is doing here. Now, you want to go ahead and increment image count straight away, because if you start with 0, that will have a bunch of baked in zeros and whatever like starter fee or like initialized values that we're not want to use, and we don't want to have that on our front end. So we're gonna start with the index of number 1, which I know is a little weird because if you're a programmer, you start counting from 0. And so once we incremented it, we want to save that into the mapping that we just created. So we want to say images, image count, which in turn we have right here. So images, image count, we're going to pass in the ID itself, and you want to create an image struct in there. And so we're gonna start mapping all these values. So I'm just gonna go ahead, copy it down here just so we can see it and put them there. So we can map them one by one. So you're gonna make sure that all these values actually map to the values that you are storing inside of the mapping. So initially you wanna store or to start up with, so the first value is going to be the ID. So what's the ID? It's image count. The second value is going to be our URL. So that's something that we pass in. So we're just gonna use that. And we're gonna have to have the caption. And then we're gonna total tip starting out obviously is gonna be 0. And the address payable author. So basically the person who is going to be the owner or the author of this post is the message sender, the person who is uploading the. So we're just going to say payable, and because we want to make sure that later on we can transfer funds to this account. And so we just pass in message sender, and then you want to create a new address array that is empty. And that's how you do that in Solidity. Forgot the comma. There you go. And as you can see, you gotta correctly position all of your variables that you keep passing in to make sure they are good with the struct you defined earlier on. Now, I forgot the semicolon once again, not surprising. And then there's one more function that we're gonna go ahead and create right now, and that's going to be tip image owner. And so we're gonna pass in a UN256, which is just going to be the image ID. And it's gonna be once again a public. However, this one is gonna be payable, meaning that this actually will process payments, this will charge users and then transfer money. So that's all that literally does. So before you do any kind of like guard clauses or anything, we'll have to create a local instance of the image the user is trying to tip. So we're gonna fetch that from the images mapping, and then we're gonna pass an ID, and that way this will contain the local instance of that image that is being tipped at the moment. Now, guard clauses. There's a couple of them. So you want to make sure that the tip amount. So you want to make sure that the ID that is being passed in is greater than 0. You cannot tip on the 0th or like first image, because that only has dummy data in it that has a null address, so that's going to cause errors. So you want to make sure the ID is not 0, it's greater than 0. Now you also want to make sure that the ID, why did I do a line break? But the ID has to be smaller or equal to than the image count. Actually, I shouldn't allow equal sign there. And so this is how our first guard clause will look like. The second one is going to make sure that whoever is tipping is actually tipping more than 0. So it's going to be message that value has to be greater than 0. So maybe I should write that. And then you can just put in whatever error message here. So a tip must be greater than 0. And then let's add an error message here too. Invalid image ID. Like that. Put the semicolon out, because otherwise the error is not going to go anywhere. And then you also want to make sure that the person who is tipping, I almost said the person who's tripping. So the person who's tripping is not the same as the author. And so that's why we created the local instance here before we even started with the guard clauses. So message sender cannot equal to _ image author. All right. That I think is pretty self-explanatory. Like, you would just burn gas for no apparent reason, but maybe someone wants to do that. So I don't know. Not in this app though. So you want to put in an error message, which is going to be owner cannot tip their own image. Put that semicolon out. Call it a day. There's your guard clauses. That's basically going to make sure that whatever kind of transaction is going to come through is going to be valid. Now, before you do anything, before you do any of the administrative stuff, you want to make sure that the owner actually does get the funds intended to be sent. So straight away, transfer the message.value. And right after that, we're going to go ahead and start documenting this entire situation that was happening. So we're going to need to increase the total tipped. So we're going to say plus equals mess value. And that basically means it means the same as it does in JavaScript. It takes the current value, adds the new value to it, and then saves it back to the original. Now, you also want to make sure that we save everything to the mapping itself. So we'll have to save this newly, freshly updated total tip amount back to our mapping. So image ID is going to be the local. Is going to equal to the local image instance that we just modified. Now, You might be wondering like why we even created these events here. Let's go ahead and actually emit them right now, and we're going to be using that. I forgot them, to be honest, up here. So we're gonna do them both, but that you can completely skip on them. You can like literally remove these. It's just like a nice touch to use these events. And basically what it will do is later on like Etherscan and whatever, you'll be able to see a more humanly readable version of what actually happened, and you don't have to figure out by transaction ID and whatever kind of stuff, because that would literally make it impossible. This way, there are like some sort of data, like you think of it, actually, you know what? Think of it as console logging, but like for the blockchain, and that should pretty much explain itself, like why it's important. But once again, if you don't want to, you don't have to. It's just something that I think is pretty important. All right, so you're gonna save the ID, and once again, you want to map the values that you're passing into whatever you define up there. So you need ID, you need the URL. So I'm just gonna try to position the screen like that. So we're gonna say image.url, and you want to go and say image.caption. You want to say image total tipped. Message.value, which is going to equal to the current tip. So actually that should be like before the total tip. What just happened there? So put message.value there, and then say image.total tip, and then you want to say image author. Let's just double check. We got ID, we got URL, caption, current tip, total tip, and then the author. Nice. All right, cool. There you got indentation, whatever, line breaking, everything prettier clicked in. Perfect. All right, next up, let's go. Let's actually emit the other event as well, which I forgot. Oops. So that's going to be image created, and yeah, that basically just went right through it. So we got ID, we got URL, we got caption, and author. Now that's interesting. So we're gonna need to update those. And I'm just gonna pass in everything that we passed in there. That was like an interesting, okay. And finally, let's go ahead and emit image created, which has all these 4 items, and my autocomplete is doing weird stuff. So I'm just gonna go, oh, it's just prompting me to jump through them. Thank you. So we got image URL, you gotta pass in the caption, which is gonna be underscore caption, and then you wanna pass in the payable message sender. That should technically take care of it. There's a comma missing there, semicolon, good. And that is basically it. That's your contract. We're gonna go ahead and test it out, test everything out, go ahead, deploy it, and then just finish out the app real fast. All right, now let's go ahead and test out this contract that we just built, and let's go ahead and deploy it. As you probably have seen in a couple other videos, we are using Remix IDE, which is pretty cool because they have this extension for VS Code. So you want to go ahead, download it if you haven't done that already. And if you did, that's your icon. Go ahead, open it up. You want to set the compiler version to 0817 and then activate the tab. All right, let's see what it does. And once again, if you haven't seen any other tutorials, this might be new, but we are going to be using Ganache as our local blockchain. So basically to get it, you can just go to trufflesuite.com/Ganache, download it right here, and then you can go ahead, install, and then basically this is what we will get. And if you're new to this, just hit quick start when it prompts you, and then you're going to be seeing a screen like this. I'm just gonna go ahead, quick connect, and then moving on, let's just straight away compile this contract. Let's see if there are any errors in there. Seems like everything is good to go, as you can see it right here. And let's deploy it. Let's see what could happen. Oh, let me deploy it again, cut it. And let's deploy it. Let's see what could go wrong. So we got a few things over here. We got image count, which currently when you hit call, it says 0. Let's see images. Let's see what do we got there. Yeah, this is the base data that I was talking about, and this is what we're not going to render on the front end. But let's go ahead and now add a New image. I'm just going to use dummy data as usual because these are like literal actual strings. So wait, where it is? So here I'm not gonna put in like a real URL, but you can do it if you want to. So I'm just gonna say URL in here and then caption here, or actually my image URL and my image caption. And let's go ahead and hit transact. Let's see what happens. All right, all kinds of gaslighting. That's perfect. And let's see, what do we got? We're gonna go ahead and grab the number 1 image. And as you can see it, we are returning everything perfectly. There is the URL, the caption, total tip, perfect. All right, let's go ahead and tip. And we're gonna add the value of, I don't know, let's just put in like some bold numbers, like 2 ETH, 20 ETH. Oh, and you want to make sure it's set to Ether, otherwise it's going to go in the way. You also have to change the wallet you're using. So what we're expecting is from this wallet to this wallet, 20 ETH goes or gets transferred basically. So I expect this to go down by 20 ETH, and I expect this to go up by 20 ETH. So I expect this to be at 86 ETH and this to be 68. Basically a value change. Actually, that's a little weird. So I'm just gonna go with 15. All right, so a new one, I expect the upper one to go down to 53 and the lower, wait, no, go up, go up to 83, and the lower one, I expect it to go down to 73. All right, let's see if that goes through or not. And let's hit transact. And there you go. It just went through. So yeah, that apparently worked in terms of transaction. And if we call on it again, then you can see the total tip. There's this big old number that starts with a 15. The reason for that is in Ethereum land and in Solidity, as I've said it a couple of times, you always have to operate within Way, or like in Way. It's like instead of paying dollars, you would have to pay it in pennies. So let's convert that Way to Ether. Converter. Oh, there it is. And I'll just paste it in, and there you go. Now you can see it's 15 Ether. That seems pretty promising. There's nothing really much to talk about here, so I'm just going to go ahead and close it. That was the testing, and now let's go ahead and deploy. All right, now with all that done, the only thing really left is to deploy. So once again, we're going to be using Truffle for that this time. And here it is. This is your extension you want to go ahead and download. And then there's your icon that it's going to produce once it's downloaded. Yeah, let it just set itself up. And this is not going to be here for you if it's your first time, but you can just go ahead, hit connect network, and then hit ganache, paste in basically this RPC server link. So there's that. And then for Infura, I have the wrong project connected. So I'm going to go ahead and select Infura there. And because I already authenticated myself with Infura, it already fetched all the projects that I have. So I'm just going to go ahead and select Instagram. However, if it's your first time, there's probably, there's probably a little pop-up window right here. Hit sign up right there. That'll open up Infura, and then you're good to go. Now, Truffle. So now what we're going to do next up is we're going to go ahead and right click on Instagram Solidity, and let's see what the terminal says back to us. I'm just going to make it big. That's what she said. So it says everything is up to date. I don't really like that because that usually means that in the build folder there's no ABI, which we definitely do need. While it's still here in artifacts, it's formatted a little differently. So I'm just going to go ahead and see the Truffle app and then Truffle build. So that's basically going to get it done anyways. Whoops. Okay, so it says Pragma Solidity is no bueno. That's probably because my compiler version is not correct. So that's something you want to make sure that is correct. Let's go ahead, hit 17. Actually, let me just search for it in here. So we want to search for compiler and then using remote version. Yeah, so that basically should take care of it. Now, one more place where it could go wrong is the Truffle config file. where, oh yeah, there you go, where the version is 0.8.16. So let's fix that. And probably the reason for that is it is best to go live with one version just below the latest one. It's because everything is so new and so early. But we're gonna go with the latest. It's just like living carelessly. So let's go ahead and say truffle. Was it compile? I think so. There you go. Okay. What is truffle build? Okay, so as you can see, there are two ways to compile as of right now. However, when you use truffle build, this is just a PA, so feel free to skip it. Oh, this is just a PSA, so feel free to skip it. But in the sixth, like basically version 6 of truffle build will be deprecated. The more you know. All right, so we got the API. Now we're gonna go ahead and copy it into utils right there. So it's nice. So there's your new Instagram.json file. And right before we actually move anywhere further, I just want to go ahead and set up our front end to be able to interact with this. Oh, jeez, skip that, cut that. And so with that done, it is time to go ahead and like finally actually deploy it. So if you don't have anything connected, if it's your first time and you haven't worked with Infura before, cut that too. So I'm just gonna go ahead, right click on it, and then just go ahead and deploy it to my ganache. So that's this guy over here. Let's see what happens there. Looking good. All right, finish running. And whenever it says the config file has incorrect format, like just skip it. It's being too sensitive. I don't know why that's happening, but there's no problem there. Finish running, deploy succeeded. This is your contract address you want to go ahead and copy. So save that. And not even in your truffle config, you want to go into your constants file and paste it right into address. The reason we are using this instead of the one we're going to be deploying to the testnet is local is always faster, especially in blockchain, like 10 times more true. But we're not going to stop right there. We are definitely deploying it to a testnet as well. So right click on Instagram again, and just type in girly and truffle configuration file not found. That's not true. So sometimes if your truffle app is in a separate folder, sometimes this extension sees that as an error or something. So in those cases, you can just go back into your terminal and then cd into that folder, cd into your truffle app, type in code space period, and that'll open up a new VS Code inside of that folder. So in this case, let's just do that. No hard feelings. Deploy the contract. Let's see what's going to happen. Yup, there you go. There's your value. And if it's your first time, you're going to want to use the paste mnemonic and then go into your Chrome, click MetaMask where you already have an account that is connected that has Girdly ETH in it. So you can find faucets for that on the internet anywhere basically. Hit settings, go into security and privacy, and then under your reveal secret recover phrase, you will have those 12 words that you shouldn't share with anyone. After you got that, oh, I didn't mean to do that. After you say that, that window that I just popped up will pop up as well. Once you pasted it there, and then you can just save this file somewhere so you will have it just like I do. So let's do it once again. And once you saved it, it's going to be showing up right there. And then once you hit that, it's going to go through the whole deployment process again. Now, it'll be loading for a little bit, and you will need to install from this notification thing. So you just want to click that and then install that dependency, and then you should be good to go. All right, after a quick coffee break, we just got our contract address. So copy that, and then you can literally close this window. It's just something unique, and then you can paste it right up above here. And what I like to do is type in the exact same, and then just paste it right there. And after that, you can type in Girdly so that you know later on that's your Girdly deployment. And then after this, you can just say either local or ganache or whatever you want. But basically, this will allow you to switch between the two really easily. Or if you were to deploy it, your front end to somewhere, you can somewhere that has a local and a online environment handling, you can put these in as environment variables for these separate. For now, it's good for us. We can get 99% of everything done just like this. And so with that, our contract is deployed, and it's time to connect our wallets to the application. Okay, let's go ahead and connect that wallet right here. Now, there's a few things that we're going to be importing for that. So, as follows: we need chain, configure, chains, create, client, and from Web3, which you already have installed, so don't worry about that. Then we're going to need the styles for Rainbow. So import, and styles.css, and then a bunch of things from Rainbow. So we're going to get default wallets, like there. We need Rainbow Kit provider and dark theme. And all this is coming from that thing right there. Now, two more stuff is Infura provider, not that, not from there. Wagme / provider / and then I'm just gonna duplicate this line and change this to JSON RPC. And this is gonna be JSON RPC provider, like that. Now, a few things that we're gonna need to configure. We're gonna need chains, and we're gonna need provider. And all this is going to come from after we destructured them from configure chains. And these are going to be two arrays. All right, so first one, chain. These are going to be the chains, and these are going to be chain.girly and chain.localhost, just like that. And then we're going to need the provider. Now, there's going to be two providers that we already set up. So first of all, we're going to need to set the priority to 1. Meaning Infura will be used as our main provider, and we're going to provide an API key for it, which I believe I said we're going to set it up, but then we never set it up actually. So it's going to be coming from process environment .infura _API key. And so the way you do it is by going here, and then I think I said you should copy this link and we're going to need it. So yeah, now this is the time where we're going to need it. So in your next step, just create a new file, name it .env.local, and then in there, Infura _API key, and that's where the value of it is going to go. Now you will have to restart your server. So let's just do that real quick. And now that way it's all loaded in and all ready to go. Now option 2, because local isn't really provided by Infura, it's on Ganache. We're gonna have to custom add the new RPC server. So before we do that, priority 2, and then we're gonna have RPC, and we're going to define the chain that uses the RPC. And there we go. Now, for this, we probably already went through it once, but here it is. You're going to need that link. So copy that guy and paste it there. And that should be good to go. So why are we importing it twice? Wait. Oh, it needs to be lowercase. So like that. All right. So that should technically take care of a lot of things here. All right. And we're going to see it in action in just a second. Just first create the connectors. This is like a bunch of boilerplate code that just makes it super easy to work with Rainbow, and later on you're gonna understand why we're doing all this. So app name, and it's gonna say, and we're just gonna pass in all the chains. So this here we created the chains themselves, and then here we're gonna pass it in, and this is what makes the chain selector. This is going to create the chain selector. So that's what's happening there. And then we're gonna do one more thing, which is gonna be wag config, and you guessed it, it's not coming from wag config. It's gonna be create client, and I'm gonna enable auto connect so that any user coming in don't have to keep connecting their wallets all the time. And then you want to pass in your connectors, and you want to pass in the provider you created. Now, a few things that we're going to need to do now. We're going to have to wrap the entire app with the, so that the entire MetaMask energy is just flowing through our app. So, wagme config, and then we're going to say client, and that's going to be the wagme config that we just created, like that, without typos. Paste it, and then wrap it around the app. And then next up, you're going to have a rainbow kit provider, which will need the chains. So pass that in. And then a theme, which will be dark theme. Make that a function. And then you can enable cool mode. It's just a nice little animation that I really like, so I usually enable it. So that's basically it in terms of, let's see, what do we got? Chains.map is not a function. Oh, because you have to pass in all of them. So like, I was passing in this guy, but in reality, you gotta pass in this guy with a plural. And that should have solved it. So let's just double check, refresh. Okay, we're good to go there. And now if you go into your header and like somewhere here, you import connect button, and then place that button connection button, and then place that button connection right after this A outline thingy, like that. That should give you that exact account, that exact button. And because my MetaMask is already connected and auto connect is enabled, that's what's showing up. But there you go. That's what you will see probably if you haven't connected it to this application yet. There you go. There's MetaMask. And then I'm going to hit connect once again. And that's it. That's basically it. And then here are all the chains. And these are the wrong chains. So that's weird. That honestly is probably because this Infura API key doesn't resolve itself. So let's try again one more time. And if I refresh, okay, that's still not working. Oh, once again, I passed in the wrong chain here. Yeah, it's pretty easy to mess up. So just want to make sure like you use chain in the singular when you import it, and then when you create the array of chains. But then from that point on, you will want to use it as a plural. So from that, you will need those. And so you will have to pass in with the plural. And there you go. Now it's fixed and it's dark mode, and you saw the cool mode, how like the little sprinkle animation. So that's it for connecting the wallet. And now it's time for the functionality. All right, now with that all done, it is time we go ahead and set up our context that will literally take care of all kinds of blockchain connection. I'm gonna close all these random folders, and I'm just gonna go ahead and create a context folder in which we're gonna have a context.js file. Now, this is where all the magic is gonna happen. And so let's go ahead and import create context, use context, try to make no typos in there, use state, and use effect. Weird auto completion. All right, all this is coming from React. And then we're gonna need to import create contract, which is not directly tied to the context itself, but we're gonna be using this later and I'll just forget to import it. So we're just gonna do it now. It's just easier for everybody, trust me. And then we're on the same note, we're gonna import use account from wagme, and then we're gonna import truncate ETH address from truncate that dash address. Now you also wanna import toast because it's a toasty app. Yeah, from React toastify, just like that. And then you also want to import Web3 from Web3. All right, all this is nice and cool, but let's actually create the context once finally. So we're going to create app context using the create context thing that we just imported. And then we're going to need to create an app provider, which will take in children. And no, there's going to be no children sex trafficking or any of that stuff. Chill. Now we're going to have a return clause in there. return clause in there, just like that. Open close brands app, and then app context dot provider value. Put two objects there because one of them is going to indicate that this is JavaScript and the other one is going to indicate that this is actually factually, in fact, a object. And then in between, there goes the children with an N at the end. All right. And then we're going to make a hook out of it because that's useful. So we're going to say use app context, contact like that. Open close, create that function, and we're going to return use context and pass in app context. What? So you might be asking, what is all this stuff that's going on here? Just chill. Basically what's happening is this is a bunch of boilerplate code that you will need to run your context and to have like globally available functions and variables and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that comes with all this stuff. So once again, you're gonna need this bad boy hook to make it easier later on to interact with it. Now, what I also like to do is just create a test variable that literally all it does is says test, and then export it right away here. Now, the reason we're gonna do that is we're going to test this guy out. So let's import that app provider right there. And then we're going to wrap it around the app itself. So like right there, it's perfect. And then go into your index file, and here you can go ahead and import use app context. So the hook that we created. And then you want to go ahead and destructure test from use app context, just to double check that the context setup and all that is working perfectly. So go into your inspector and then onto your console, and you should see test pretty soon. Oh wait, it would be helpful if I actually console logged it out. Without that, you're not going to see it. All right, there you go. Now you can see it's working perfectly. And that is basically all the context that you will need to set up for this build. And I'm just going to go ahead and remove all the testing stuff. And with that said, let's upload some images. All right, so for the rest of the app, we are mainly going to stay in the context file. So let's actually just jump straight into it, get started with a couple of view states, and then we're just going to go out eventually to other files to import everything that we create here. So we're going to have a use state that is going to start out as an empty array. Oops. And then another one that is going to be our user address. And that's going to be helpful to so we're going to have one central place where we're going to store our user wallet address of the person that actually signed up or signed in to our app. And you want to fix all the typos because that's not helpful if you have them. So before we go any further, let's actually literally store the user address. So for that, we're going to use a use effect hook. So it gets updated every single time the user is changing, in fact, their wallet that is being connected. So you want to destructure address from use account like that, and then set up a use effect hook that is clinged onto that specific variable. And then whenever that changes, you want to set the user address to truncate ether and pass an address. So what that's going to look like, this truncating thingy is just make it shorter. Because if you remember, and you go into your constants file, this is how one ETH address looks like. Now, it's fine, but in our app, it's going to look something like this. So it's like more humanly readable, and you're like, let's be real, you're never ever going to read this whole thing. I haven't had it. So let's just actually get rid of that useless stuff. So now that we stored the wallet address, let's go ahead and import it, and then let's export post as well. And you export user address. I just said import because I don't know. And right in here, right back in your index.js file, you want to destructure posts instead of And straight away, let's go into our index.js file where I already set up this empty array, but that's only for the template that you're working on. So let's actually change that out. And so what we're gonna change that out for is just destructuring posts from the use context like that. And so that way it is hooked up to it, and now now this application is going to be working perfectly. However, apparently we got this error. So let's take a look at what's going on. That is, because I should have made it plural. So posts and like that. See, there you go. That fixed it. So that seems good. And then as soon as we start uploading posts, it's going to start fetching them, or whenever we implement that function. But it's going to be taken care of pretty fast. So the app is by design dynamic. And so before we actually start uploading images, there's going to be one more thing that I want to set up, and that is all the functions. So we're going to have a get all images, and this is going to be useful just so we map out what we're going to be working with. And so we're going to have an upload image equals async open close function const like that. And then we're going to have one more, which is going to be tipping the owner. So tip owner equals async open close, and then there's your function. All right. So each of these are going to be separate sections in this video, and we're going to go ahead and finally focus on this guy. Now, to make the application completely dynamic, right after everything is done in the uploading, right after the app itself is done uploading, what you want to do is call immediately the get all images function. So that's what we're going to get started. We're going bottom to top. Now, the one thing you want to make sure is having guard clauses and try catch clauses in your application whenever you're working with blockchain. I can't emphasize it enough. That is super crucial, and it will make or break your entire application. If a transaction fails, the ETH involved is going to be completely lost. And if you do all these guarding steps, that might save it that might save your customers from losing their money. So we got money on the line, we're going safe. So we're gonna say if there is no address is connected, obviously at that point, there is nothing, there's no money to lose, but then again, random error messages. So you wanna keep that stuff safe. So now what you wanna do is say const and contract, and we're going to create a contract instance right here for this specific function. And let's take a look at what that does. So that's actually happening in your constants file. So let's create contract thing is destructuring the Ethereum object from your window, which is basically the code snippet that MetaMask injects into your application. And if that is present and if that is valid, then it's going to create a Web3 item or a Web3 instance using that code. And Web3 is just it's an NPM package. It's called Web3.js, and that just enables you to interact with the blockchain. However, it needs a couple of things. One, obviously, wallet connection. And then it's going to create a whole contract interface for you based on the ABI that you passed in. So that's the Instagram JSON file that we put in here earlier, and that is the address that we put right here. That's pretty much it. It actually doesn't need... These addresses don't even have to be exported, but it's just nice, I think. Yeah, it seems to be working without exporting. Perfect, so there's no need to do so. Now, back in your context. So you're going to store that contract interface that function generates. And next up, we're going to create a data object where we're going to get started interacting with the contract itself. So we're going to invoke one of its methods, and that's going to be, let's see what it will create. I believe it is upload image. Yes. So if you go back there, it's just close the line break. You can just paste it there, so there's no typo options, and then you will need to pass an image URL, and you will need to pass in a caption. Now, these will be coming from the front end, so you're going to need to pass them right there. So we expect those to be passed into this function so they can be passed over there. And so it's going to be helpful there. And because it is a function that creates and pushes data onto the blockchain, you will actually have to pay gas fees for it. And the address that we'll need to pay the gas fees is going to be user address. This guy right there. I wanted to put like a comma. That's fine. And then we'll have to we're gonna need to specify some gas. So this is gonna be 3 million. But don't worry about it. It's in way. It's like a lot less. Like it looks like a big number, but it's not that big of a number. And because we want to make this application as safe as possible, I like to create a try catch function as I said earlier. So I'm just gonna do that and then catch error like that, and then console, put it out on the console just in case you want to. And then you want to put it out on the console so you can debug if there's any errors going on. So error.message like that, and then just wrap this entire thing around it. Nice. And then to make this application super interactive, we set up toast messages. And toast messages is basically just these little nice thingies that you're going to see in a little bit. That was well explained. Anyways, that's like a little loading animation that's going to watch the promise go through and all the backend stuff. And then it's just going to be like super interactive. So the users will be able to see exactly what is happening. All right, so let's set that up. It's called Toast. And I think the package is called React Toastify, which we actually imported. So let's just take a look at how it looks like. If you go to npmjs.com, it's going to be right there. Yeah, these are the toast messages, and you can come here, figure it out, and then do all kinds of modifications to it, make them yours, customize it, and this is exactly what we're going to have. Wrong error, but anyways, going back here, we're going to say toast.promise, and then passing data, which, by the way, is going to be a promise because the contract method and whatever is returning a promise. And then here, there's going to be 3 options. So there's one when the promise is pending. And then there's going to be another one when the promise has resolved. And then there's going to be one when there's an error. So these are the 3 cases. And then you can just pass in strings. And I have these created for me. So I'm just going to copy paste them. But you can customize your messages completely and as much as you want. You can literally just put in random stuff there for now, just for time-saving reasons. I want to put like a little X there. So there we go. That should technically be just perfectly enough to get started with uploading images. Now, one more thing I want to do before we do anything, because if you remember, we're going to use the local host because that's a little bit faster than any kind of testnet. And so we're going to need to connect this function to that button right there. So for that, export this guy, and then in your header, you're going to need to import it. So text. So we got the context import, and then we're going to have to destructure. So upload image equals use up context, just like that. It's actually the wrong one. Oh, this is actually the wrong file. Uh-oh. Whenever I import or open header, cut before that. Header doesn't even need to be opened. So once you exported upload images or upload image, you're gonna open the file uploadmodal.js and import use app context. And then from that, you want to destructure this specific function. So you can remove that const and then just paste upload image equals use app context, just like that. That should pretty much take care of this whole thing. It says the function takes in 0 parameter. It's going to go away in a little bit. This is just like my code quality checker. Okay, let's see if that helps. Okay, perfect. Now it's gone. It just has to realize it takes a little bit of time. That's fine. Anyways, so now it should be hooked up to that button. Actually, this was already hooked to that. So what we're going to do is I have this nice rug right here. That's gonna be my first. It's gonna be my first image that I upload. So wait for that little uploader thingy to finish. hit done because there's no need to crop there. And then this is my first post or whatever. Hit submit. Okay, provided address is invalid. All right, whoever's editing, I'm debugging, cut this. Okay, so I figured out the error. It's dumb. It's really dumb. So you see here, when we set the user address, that's actually going to be a truncated address, and that's not going to work here. You need the full address here, so you want to put that in there instead of the truncated one. Yeah, if you caught it by yourself, like, good. It was a pretty weird error. All right, so let's try again, uploading the same image once again. And there we go. Hit done. All right, my first post. Looks better. Confirm. Image uploaded successfully. Okay. So I mean, I guess it's time to fetch that. All right, so we got our image uploaded, allegedly. Let's figure out if we can fetch it and actually show it out on the screen. So we got the get all images. Actually, should be firing immediately. And there's one more thing, or one more place where I want to, and there's one more thing where I want to fire this function off, and that's basically every single time whenever someone opens this app. So it's gonna be another use effect, and in here, we're just going to go ahead and paste this and call it once. So that should technically call this function every single time somebody turns this app on. We'll just confirm that. Whatever, yeah, console logging object, perfect. So that is working as designed. However, now what you want to do is make sure that that there is somebody logged in. Actually, we don't have to make sure that's not necessary at all. However, we're gonna need to create a new instance because the other one is unique to that function and it's getting scrapped right after that function has run. And then we're gonna be doing some interesting things. So what we want to do is, let me just show it in the Solidity file. So if you remember, we are tracking how many images do we got. And then we are also tracking it in a mapping. So every single ID has an image linked to it. So what we're going to do is fetch this number, and then we're going to loop through this mapping. And that's how we're going to get each image one by one. All right, so to do that, we're going to say const image count. And we're going to say await contract methods, and we're going to say image count, and we're going to say call. Because we're just reading from the blockchain, that completely will work. Now let's go ahead and console log out how many images do we got. So image count, like that. We should see a 1 right there. So that's perfect. That's working as we wanted it to work. Now what we're going to do is whenever we fetch one image by one image, we're going to store them and we're going to push them into a temporary array that we're just going to have while we're here, and then we're going to save that temporary array into our use state. So how that's going to go is we already have the image count, and so now we already have the temporary array. So now it's time to actually get started looping. So for index equals 1 semicolon, and then I less than or equal to, or actually index is less than or equal to image count, like that, semicolon, and then index. It's pretty basic. It's super beginner friendly. There should be no issues here. We're just gonna call the mapping function. And so it's gonna be const image wait contract methods dot images, and then we're going to pass in index right there. And we're just gonna call it. So once again, we're just reading from the blockchain, no transaction needed. And then what you're gonna say is new posts dot push. And we're gonna say, because if you remember, actually let me just show you. But if you remember, this whole image object is a little bit weird. Let's see what is happening here. Oh, I forgot a let keyword right there. So let's try again. All right, there you go. So I'm gonna make this big. That's what she said. And if I zoom in, as you can see, every single prop and detail is being returned twice. You get this like weird object type of thing with actual named, like the named props. So what you want to do is go for these because these are like way more easy, like way easier to read as a human. And so we're just going to save those. Everything else can go out the window. So we're going to have an ID, which is going to be image.id, like that. URL, image, URL, caption, image.caption. And then you're going to have total tipped, which is image.total tipped. And then you're going to have an author, which is going to be the image.author. So that's pretty easy. That's self-explanatory, I think. There's not too much to understand about it. There's going to be a weird move that I'm going to be doing here. And by the way, we're going to wrap all this into a try-catch in a little bit. But after, like outside of this for loop, what you want to do is you want to say set post. And now this is when we are going to update the state itself. So what you want to do is say new posts dot reverse. Or actually, let's not do that right now. So let's just be happy a little bit because we have our new post. We have the post that we just uploaded there. Now, what you expect from Instagram is that newer posts, and I know the algorithm and everything, it doesn't do it that way. We're not going to mess with it. This is like a true, real Instagram that we're going to have here. So so what we expect is the newer posts are going to be showing up on top of older posts. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and I'm going to get another rug image. And it's funny because in crypto land, if they steal your money, it's basically a rug pull. Am I making fun of other people's losses? Yes, I am. All right. So here, what I'm going to do is just paste that image there and then zoom out because why was I zoomed in so hard? And let's go ahead and upload another image. So done. And this is my second post on the top. So I expect it to show up on the top, right? So confirm that, full screen MetaMask. And then if you scroll down, it's below, it's at the bottom. That's not how we wanted to do. I already spoilered it, but basically what you need to do is just reverse that array. And so that way the newer posts are going to show up at the top. All right, so we are like pretty much right there. The only thing now that we have to implement is literally just tipping. And once we're done with that, this application is complete. All right, now we are at the very last step. We are at the tipping functionality of this very application. And this is your time to grab another coffee because we're gonna need to be alive and we're gonna need to be awake to test out all the functionality that we'll have. So with that, all that random jargon that I just said, and even I don't know what I just said. So with all that done, one more thing. This all has to go into a try catch. So before we go any further, try catch. I can't even type it. Catch like that. Error and error dot message. So like I said, everything on the blockchain goes into a try catch. There you go. There it is. Now it's cool. All right, let's go ahead and implement the tip owner functionality. Cut this. All right, so this is our very last function. And what we're going to get started with is, once again, creating a new contract. And in this case, we will need the address. So we'll have to actually guard for that too. So if there's no address, we're just going to return and skip it. And before I forget it, let's just export this tip owner function. All right, so we got our contract instance. We got everything we need. We can get started. So good old try catch, because you don't want to mess with errors here. Event message. So that's all cool. And then what we're going to do here is we're just going to have a hard-coded amount of tip that one user can do, or like one user can send to another one. You can make this, actually, it could be your homework to make this as a dynamic thing, but for now, we're just going to go with a hard-coded one. You will see how easy it is to make it dynamic. So what you want to do is you want to convert any kind of, and like I said before, so what you want to do, because I said it earlier, Solidity only works with weight, which is like a super small ether amount. So you will have to convert it. Now, how you do it is you gotta pass in a string of the ether value and then actually specify that you are passing an ether, all right? And so that way, this ether amount is going to be converted to Wei, as it says there. All right, so there's your amount. And so that is what we are going to be sending as a tip in this application. But like I said, you can specify it. You can have like a little model which like pops up, and then the user can choose how much they can tip, 55%, like at all the restaurants. And so what you want to do is going to be like relatively close to what we have here. All right. So actually, from just for pattern recognition's sake, you want to go ahead and try it using this thing. Now, there's going to be one more thing that you will have to add here, which is value. And so once you add that and you figure out what's going to be the value of the key, which we call value, there's a lot of values in here. So you want to have a value here, which will have a number in there, but you want to pass in a variable. So you go ahead, try it out, and then pause this video because I'm going to go into the solution right now. All right. So if you try it out and you failed, no worries. I used to fail with Ethereum all the time. In fact, I still do. In fact, I still pause it whenever I get an error, and then I spend 2 hours to debug it. So that's fine. You just don't see it because it's off camera. Anyways, what we're going to do here is we're going to create a transaction, which will be interacting with a contract, methods, yada yada. We all know that. Let's go copy function name, which is tip image owner. Where is that? There it is. And then we'll just go call that. And then we'll have to pass in the image ID. All right. So that's something we're going to have to do. So we're going to need the front end to pass it in here into the context, so that we can pass it over. And because we are actually creating data onto the blockchain and we're like sending, we're going to need to use we're going to need to use the method send down there. And so the origin is going to be, or the sender is going to be the address. And then once again, not this address, that truncated thing, because that's going to error out again, like last time. I'm going to go with the usual gas value, 3 million, like that. And then this is the key one, the amount. So basically, this will specify that there's going to be a value that the user will have to pay. That's the big number that kept showing up as 0. So we're going to need to pass this in here. And that way, you're going to actually transfer funds towards the owner of the image you want to tip. You will actually transfer funds to the owner of the image you want to tip. Now, we can set a guess limit of null and then just call it a day. And now, to make it toasty, we're going to use the toast.promise method. And we're going to pass in tx, as in transaction, and then create the usual object. And like last time, I have the 3 case scenarios typed up there. So I'm just going to paste it here. But basically, you want to have a pending text, you want to have a success text, and you want to have an error text. And basically, that is pretty much the application. So let's go ahead and test this out. And actually, I'll have to test out the error itself. If you remember, whoa, it says please connect your wallet. That's interesting. So there's a little bit of a bug there. We're going to fix that in just a second. And it's also here, so that's also interesting. So there's like a few dynamic stuff that we're going to have to fix. All right, so let's do that before we mess with any kind of tipping. All right, so one of them is going to be in the right suggestion bar. Nope. So one of them is going to be in the home right bar. Now, in here, we will need to import the use app context. So basically the app context hook, like that. And then we're going to destructure user address from the context, like that. And that should update this guy. Okay, so that's pretty good. And then there's this one more thing we need to update. And that's going to be inside of feed and inside action buttons. No, it's going to be inside of caption. Now in caption, we expect to have a username. I don't think that's what we send it. That's how we set it there. So let's take a look at how we have it in context. I actually cut everything. Cut everything where I open the caption. So that's not an implementation error. Okay, so for whoever is editing it, cut this part out from the point where I first opened item and caption and all this stuff. So the only thing that I want to fix here with them is this use up context stuff. Everything else will be coming, and even this stuff is going to be coming from the CLI. So they don't have to fix. And then back to the video right now. All right, so with that fix, we should be pretty much good to go. So grab this tip owner and we're gonna go to the item file. Now in here, and we're gonna be going to the action buttons file right there. So there's this error that's going on here. That's because once again, I set up this dummy function there just so it doesn't like completely go nuts. So instead I have an error. Now we're gonna have to import use up context here. And I think you see the parent here. So once again, destructure it and then use app context. Oops, and that should be good to go. Now, let's remove that. Let's paste it back. No errors there. So that should, in theory, make everything work. So that's pretty much all the application. Now I'm just gonna try to tip to my own image. And if everything is set up correctly, this should throw an error. So let's try that. I'm gonna hit confirm. And there you go, there's the error. And it says owner cannot tip their own image. So it worked, it is working perfectly. Yeah, there's the error, so that's cool. And so what I'm gonna do instead is go ahead and switch my wallets, and there's my new balance, 80 ETH. So that's nice. And also you can see how the profile image is like changing. So that's actually tied to the wallet address. All right, let's try tipping. Hit confirm, and there you go, tip sent. So that technically means that there was a tip amount sent here, 0.01 ETH. So let's actually do this again. Let's just double check how much we're sending because I completely forgot it. So and yeah, 0.1. So what I'm expecting from this next test, because we haven't tested it, is it goes down, or we didn't set expectations. So this is supposed to go down to 83.62, and this should go up to 0.98. So let's tip again, but this time that image, hit confirm, and let's do it. There you go. There it is. It is working perfectly. It is beautifully built. So there you have it. That is your Instagram clone with tipping functionality built in. And that's pretty much it about your app. And once again, as I mentioned it earlier, you can go into your constants and then just switch out the deployment. Now, keep in mind that if you're switching out the deployments to the girly one, you will have to re-upload images, and your friends and whoever you're sharing this with are going to have to upload images as well. And you also will have to host this website somewhere on the internet. But basically that's it. That's it for the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down below in the comments whether you liked it or not. And don't you dare tell me anything negative, because I'll find you. Anyways, that said, go ahead, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.